In today's show, we're looking at the NBA Summer League and how the players in the Atlantic Division performed. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com and the promo code is Locked On. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. Did 3 divisions yesterday. I'm not sure how I'm going to release these next 3, what schedule we're going to have, but they're going to come out in the next couple of days. We're going to cover the Atlantic Division today. We've got the Central Division to go, as well as the Northwest Division to wrap up Summer League. And I'm going to be honest with you, the Atlantic Division is pretty destitute in terms of impact players for this season coming. But we're still going to cover it because for Dynasty people as well, there's a little bit of value to talk about, and we just need to get through all of these teams. So, I've sold it for you. Warnie.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
Let's start with the Boston Celtics. Again, you're looking at this roster, there wasn't huge amounts of prospects on it. And that's always, and I will continue to bang on about this when viewing Summer League, when we look at the production of players, look who they're surrounded by. They're not competing with Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, Amen Thompson, Shaden Sharp, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, James Bouknight. They're not competing with those guys. It's Justin Champagnie and Jay Scrubb and JD Davison. So Jordan Walsh was, I don't know if a surprise is the right word. In fact, maybe Sheev could say that.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
He performed well, but this sort of situation, Jordan Walsh had 24 usage. Is that anything real on this actual real NBA Celtics team? Look, no, it's not. JD Davison had some really good highlight passes. He's a two-way guy. He had 7 assists, 10 points, but shot poorly, 27% from 3. They obviously lost a point guard in Marcus Smart, but in terms of the depth chart there, we're still looking at Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, and Peyton Pritchard. But there might be an opportunity at some point for Davison to get minutes. I'm not ruling him out being an NBA backup or a third-string guy at some point, but he needs to get that shooting better. He's still not 21. 7 assists in 26 minutes in a Summer League setting is very impressive as well. Not a high assists environment usually, but that's okay. But there's just a lot in his game that he needs to work on. Julian Champagnie for the San Antonio Spurs went off during Summer League. Justin Champagnie is on the Celtics. He wasn't quite as good, but he did have a sizable role, 29 minutes, 22 usage. He averaged 13 and 8, and what he is a very good rebounder for his position, but the shooting wasn't there. 39 from the field, 71 from the line, 30% from 3. Now, this Celtics team doesn't have a huge amount of wings on it. There's 2 elite ones in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but after them, you're looking at Sam Hauser, who's not really a wing. There's Champagnie in the mix there, and that's why Jordan Walsh might get rotation minutes, because they don't have wings. It's just a weird roster. It's a weird roster. Jay Scrubb has signed with a two-way. He's previously played for the Clippers. I think he played for the Magic last year as well. He's only 23. Well, he's not yet even 23. He's a very big volume scorer. 14 points in only 20 minutes. Shot 40% from 3. 78 from the line. Got to the line. Got steals. He's an interesting player that has dealt with multitudes of injuries to a foot throughout the early part of his career. Came from, I think it was a Division 2 or Division 3 school in the draft where he was a late second round pick. And I'm not ruling him out ever being able to develop into remember Marshawn Brooks, who played for the Nets, who had that little 1-2 year period where he had these real big volume sort of scoring bursts on a bad team. This is not a bad team, and Scrubb's still a two-way guy, but the start of his career has been delayed quite a bit, and he's always shown an ability to be able to score. And he's always one of those guys, the last day of fantasy, the last 2 days of fantasy, hey, let's play Jay Scrubb 40 minutes, he drops 30 points. He just has an ability to do that. So he's just, in that respect, someone to watch. Now, let's talk about Walsh, who was the 38th pick in the draft. 27 minutes a night, The most impressive thing here was 41% shooting from three. Obviously, it's a really small sample size. It's only across 5 games, but that was the big thing with Walsh is he couldn't shoot in college. Defensively, I think he's going to be really good. He didn't generate big defensive stats, just a steal and 0.2 blocks, but 16 and 4 with 2 threes is really impressive. Again, he's not going to be in a position where he's a 23 usage player, 24 usage player. He's probably going to be a 14, 15 usage player on the big club, and that's going to mean that he barely scores, and he's going to have to bring his value through things like rebounds or assists or steals and blocks, and I'm not really sure all that's there, even though he can be a really strong player from a real-life perspective, from his positional size. Fantasy-wise, I'm not 100% convinced of it. We see these guys who can be good defenders, Isaac Okoro, and it doesn't translate at all across to fantasy. And I think Walsh has got more offensive upside than what Okoro does at this point, although when Okoro came into the draft, he probably did have more offensive upside than where Walsh sits now. So while we can look at this and be impressed, and you should be impressed. He played really well, Jordan Walsh. I just don't know that it translates into it. Look, I definitely wouldn't draft him in redraft leagues. Not 12, not 14, probably not 16-team leagues. And in Dynasty, I'm not jumping him way up into the top 20 or anything based on this performance, because somebody has to get shots, somebody has to get usage, and when you don't have any prospects on your team, they can get funneled that way. He responded well. He shot well. I'm not sure I'm buying that. The other guy on this team, and I talked about point guard depth, Delano Banton is on this team after a couple of years in Toronto. He's just a weird player. He's like a 6'9" point guard who can't really shoot. He averaged 15 points a game, but 32% from the field, 70% from the line, 23% from 3. 15, 6, and 4 is a real Delano Banton special. Normally, he's a good steals guy as well, but the size is interesting. The shooting's just terrible. And I just don't, or maybe he gets the minutes as the 4th string point guard over JD Davison, but I don't really see Banton, who's going to be 24 midway through the season, as any sort of NBA upside prospect. I don't, that lack of shooting and just no complete dynamism in other areas probably leads me to think that, he's intriguing, but not someone that we have long-term excitement about. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. I've got long-term excitement about them because they've been here advertising with us for a long time, and that's for a very good reason. It's because it is daily fantasy, and it's daily fantasy made easy. You don't have to worry when you play daily fantasy on PrizePicks about going in and setting lineups with a salary cap. You don't have to worry about going up against all the Sharks with their thousands of generated lineups that they throw in there and different formulas. All it is player projections. It's you versus a player projection. They'll set a Jordan Walsh player projection at a steal, and you go, okay, he'll get more than that. Simple as that. You do 2 to 6 of those individual player projections, and you can win up to 25 times your entry fee back. It's super fast. You can get your entry done and submitted in under 60 seconds. It's available in over 30 US states and the majority of Canadian provinces as well. And there's lots of sports at the moment. Roll with the FIFA Women's World Cup. You can roll with Major League Baseball, golf, tennis. Wimbledon just finished, but there's going to be more tennis tournaments going. You got NASCAR, you've got boxing, you've got MMA, UFC. It's all there. And of course, the GOAT sport, disc golf. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play your daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Let's go to the Brooklyn Nets, who had 2 pretty interesting first-round picks on their team. One of them, the Pimple, Derek Whitehead, didn't play as he was recovering from foot surgery. That's fine. And the other one didn't play very much, and that's Noah Clowney. The rest of their roster, like some interesting things to talk about, and a couple of guys who aren't actually currently on NBA rosters, so I do think are worth talking about. They did sign Armani Brooks to a 2-way deal. He is 25 years of age. He's played for Houston in the past, a little bit of time with the Raptors. He had really bad shooting last season that he played, but in his previous first season, he shot 39% from 3. He averaged 18 points with 4 threes on 48% shooting from 3, and that's valuable, if that is real. I don't know that it's real, but if he's able to be a real shooter like that, then fine. He is 25, but this team does lack guards, and they lost Seth Curry, and they lost Joe Harris. Yes, there's still Cam Thomas, and they brought Lonnie Walker in, but they don't have this elite high-volume three-point shooting guy. I don't think that Brooks is going to be that player, but he has shown a little bit of that in the past, and he flashed some of that here. And then their second-round pick 51, Jalen Wilson. 30 minutes for him, almost 18 points, 8 rebounds out of Kansas, 44% shooting, 46 from 3, which is great. 42% from 2 is terrible. My issue with Wilson coming out of the draft was his age. He's about to turn 23 in a few months. But also, he was on that Kansas team and everything was sort of funneled towards him. He's a very good rebounder. He can probably play up a little bit at small ball 4, but he's more of a 3. But he had so much usage on that team and he wasn't massively efficient. And I just don't think that's ever going to be his NBA role. And we always try to look at what can you do to translate into an NBA role when you're not the number one guy. And unfortunately on this team, like he still had not a huge usage. As for Brooks, by the way, 19 usage only and still scored 18 points. Wilson was at 20 usage, which is not super, super high. But he's never going to be any sort of focal point of an offense on an NBA team. I don't think he's going to be a part of the rotation, but he'll get some minutes at times for the Nets. I just don't think that there's a particularly high ceiling on him. This is one of the guys who's not currently on the NBA roster, David Duke Jr.
Why should I change? He's the one who sucks.
He's been on a two-way for the Nets in the past, and at times when he's played, he's flashed some okay things. He's not 24 yet. He's like 2 years of experience. He averaged 16.6 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. Shot only 25% from 3. I think he's probably got more of a chance of success than an Armani Brooks in the league. But again, Duke not currently on a roster. A team should be looking to bring him in and just see what he can give. I thought he was just did what he did. And I think he's taken some steps forward across his 3 years. The other guy who's not currently on a roster, which makes no sense to me, is Kennedy Chandler, who was picked at pick 38 by the Grizzlies last season, waived at the last week of the season so they could sign Kenny Lofton to a full-time contract, and Chandler hasn't been drafted or hasn't been picked up by anybody. His issue is size. He's very small, but he's a good passer. He averaged 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 14 points in 30 minutes, but only shot 36% from the field and 14% from 3. I still think that there is a role for him to develop into, at worst case, a third-string point guard and maybe even a top-quality backup. But at the moment, nobody's bit on picking him up, and I think so much of it is size. When you're 6 foot, which is basically what he is, maybe he's 6'1" listed, but he's 6 foot, you have to be absolutely elite at something. And he's a very good defender, but he's not elite enough to guard enough positions for that to make sense for teams to invest a lot there. And we are getting to see that a lot in the NBA. Unless you are Scoot Henderson, who is 6'2 and a half, 6'3", with a 6'9" wingspan, you got to be at least 6'3", 6'4" to really make an impact on an NBA team. So Chandler, 14, 5.2, and 5.4, good numbers. True shooting's really bad. The steals were good, but I'm just not sure where he ends up. Or if he gets on a roster, I would try it out, but I worry a little bit about the size factor. Their first-round pick who did play was Noah Clowney. Now, I really like Clowney. I had him as a lottery player. He just turned 19. There's a lot. It's a long-term prospect here. He didn't play very much, and I know Nets fans were not particularly impressed, and they were... And I was talking to the guys from Locked On Nets, Doug Norrie in particular. He's like, man, why did we pass on Olivier Maxence Prosper so that we could draft these two guys that we drafted? Obviously, they didn't get to see Whitehead, who I still think has tremendous upside, and they were a bit disappointed with Clowney. And I get that because Prosper is a wing. He showed way more at Summer League than Clowney did, but Clowney is 19. He only played 19 minutes. He averaged 5 points. So you look at that and go, well, why would I possibly get excited about that, Josh? Well, he averaged 5 rebounds in 19 minutes. Pretty good. But he also averaged 1.4 blocks and 1 steal. And that's the thing. He has rim protection. I think he's got very good rim protection skills. I think he's got perimeter defensive skills, which as a 4/5, which I think he's probably going to be a 5, is awesome. He is 19, so we've got plenty of time for him to grow into this. And the numbers are bad here. Like, he shot 23% from the field, which is horrendous. There's no debating that. 21% from 2, 23% from 3. Terrible numbers. But we're also not going to say, well, you're a 6'10 center. You're probably going to be a 23% shooter as we move forward. It just is not representative of anything. It's a long development thing. Nick Claxton is an unrestricted free agent for the Nets after this season. Not to say that they'll move on from him at all, but their backup situation, it's Ben Simmons, I guess, Day'Ron Sharp. Look, there's not great options there. Clowney is going to struggle to get significant minutes this season. But the fact that his rim protection and block numbers and steal numbers showed up in limited minutes is encouraging for me. And I think he's going to slide significantly in Dynasty rookie drafts because of this performance, but I don't think you should let that impact you. If you thought those first two teams had no prospects to talk about, let me introduce you to the New York Knickerbockers. Just one of the worst summer leagues. I watched about 5 seconds of this team. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, why would I watch them? There's nobody on this roster that's useful, really. They didn't have a draft pick. They had Isaiah Roby, who has bounced around and had success with the Thunder in the past. He is currently on their roster a bit. Honestly, I keep forgetting that he's on their roster. He averaged 10 and 5 in 26 minutes with 2 assists. He only shot 25% from 3. Part of the appeal of Roby is he can be a big man who somewhat can shoot, but that's sort of dropped off the last season or two. And I don't think he's... Look, they don't have a backup power forward at the moment. They're going to have to play Barrett and Josh Hart there. maybe Roby moves into that role, but honestly, what we saw here doesn't get me excited. Their other two-way guy, Jacob Toppin, didn't play, but their other two-way guy, Jalen Martin out of OTE, did. And I was trying to look at what stat do I put up as his highlight stat here, and it's nothing. He played 29, maybe I should have put up 29 minutes a game. Like 13 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, 41% shooting, 29% from 3. I thought he showed that he can be an okay player. I don't think that he showed that he is an awesome player or worthy of rotation minutes, and he's probably going to play, honestly, if I set the over-under of minutes played for Jalen Martin for the Knicks this season, it would be 80. Let's say 80 and a half. The Knicks and Tom Thibodeau don't play these guys. They never do. And then there's Trevor Keels, who was in that position last year as a two-way guy and never played, and then was waived and he was brought back. And he's a guy that has some questionable offense, but good defense. And he shot 42% from the field, 40% from the line, but averaged 3 assists and a steal in his 22 minutes. That is way too long about talking about the worst team at NBA Summer League. The Sixers didn't have draft picks, but they had interesting players on their roster. And the first one of those guys is a guy that I highlighted the other day when talking about dynasty, buy low type of players, and that is the package, Jaden Springer. He is very young. He was a first-round pick 2 years ago, I think. 2 years ago. And he was 18 when he was drafted, so he's younger than a lot of the guys drafted in this draft. He is still not even 21. He was picked 28. He averaged 19 points with almost 3 steals, 1.2 blocks. The problem with him has been offense and shooting. 42% from the field, 25% from 3. That's not good, but he's an absolute defensive terror. And after a really poor first game, you picked it up offensively. I don't know that he's going to have a gigantic rotation role this season, but Shake Milton is gone, and James Harden might be gone. So there is a chance, and I think they would absolutely in year 3. This is it for him. He needs to make a rotation mark. And DeAnthony Melton is still there, but Springer can have not a DeAnthony Melton impact. But look at those numbers. 19, 4, and 2 with 3 steals and over a block. That's DeAnthony Melton, right? Springer's not DeAnthony Melton. He's also 5 or 6 years younger, though. So he still remains an interesting player. Again, he is, 4 months or 3 months older than Brandon Miller and Amen and Asar Thompson? Older or younger than Jordan Hawkins? And plenty of other players who were drafted in the first round. So he's very young. He's got 2 years of NBA experience. And there's a ton of defensive potential. I think this is the year. This is the year we need to see something from him. Their two-way guy, Terquavion Smith, was a projected first-round pick in 2022 and then went back to school and fell out of the draft. Thought he sort of did his thing. 15 points, almost 4.5 assists, a steal, and shot poorly, 39 from the field and 63 from the line. His shooting numbers fell off a lot at NC State this last season. He's a two-way guy. He's not going to play a huge amount, but he's still only 20 as well. I think he's got a chance to make a full-time NBA contract at some point, but the efficiency is the problem. He's also very skinny. He's very Bones Highlandish in terms of his playing style and his look and his physique. And then Filip Petrusev, who amazingly they signed to a contract to be their 5th string center. He was a second-round pick last season. He put up some pretty good numbers in Europe. I think he shot 42% from 3 over in Europe last season. He averaged 10 and 6 here with 1.4 blocks. I think there is a reasonable backup NBA center in Petrusev at some point, but he's already 23, and he's not going to play because there's Joel Embiid, there's Mo Bamba, there is Montrezl Harrell, and there's Paul Reed. And that's not even including PJ Tucker minutes at center. And now, this whole team could be blown up and changed in many directions, so Tucker could be gone, and who knows what they do. But Petrusev is signed. He's the 15th man on this roster, and I don't know why, but he's there. So we need to pay a little bit of attention. I think he's got maybe not quite like Charles Bassey upside, who I think can be an NBA starter, but there is a little bit something there for Petrusev. You're just going to have to be really patient. Ricky Council, the 4th, was another two-way guy that they signed straight after the draft. His issue in college was shooting, and man, he shot 6% on 3. 6. He hit 1 3 across, 8 games, I think it was. He averaged 10 and 4. He's athletic, but I don't even think I had him as a draftable player on my big board, and nothing that I saw from him in Summer League would change my mind there. And then their other two-way guy, their third two-way guy is as well as Tubalis from Arizona, big man, 21 years of age. He played only 12 minutes. He had 0.3 blocks with 3 points and 3 rebounds. And again, so we talk about Petrusev being the 5th string center. Tubalis is the 6th string center. He will not play this season at all. he's a sort of a big, not really a stretch guy, but a rebounding, post-scoring big man who I'm not really sure there's a huge role for him. I think he probably could have been drafted, but there's no real path or anything here. And the other guy that's worth mentioning, not currently on a roster, is Greg Brown. Greg Brown III, who we saw play for Portland for a couple of years. Very, very springy athlete, lacks a little bit of decision-making skills. And you can see here, 2.5 blocks in 20 minutes is huge. He averaged 10 points per game. He's very much along the Derrick Jones Jr. path of player, where there's skinny power forward whose shooting is a question mark, but the defensive athleticism is huge, and Brown showed that again here. Maybe he gets a shot somewhere on a training camp roster, but I don't think we need to get too excited. And speaking of not getting too excited, let's look at the last team, because we're talking about the prime penis. We're talking about S-tier schlong. We're talking about grade A dick of the Toronto Raptors, who was picked at pick 13. I know there are people who are just adamant fans of Gradey Dick, and I get into arguments with him all the time. Well, he's the best shooter in the draft. Well, is he? We don't know that, and there's absolutely no guarantee that he is that. He's got decent size at 6'6". He is going to get picked on defensively because, let's be honest, he's white. That's what happens. He's not a dreadful defender, but he's not a good one, and I'm not really sure what else he does. And I thought his summer league was mid. He had 16 points in 28 minutes. Okay. He shot under 30% from three. That happens. He'll be better than that. 16, 6, and 2 on 26 usage with 1.5 steals. Got to the line 2 times. Like, it's just okay. And he probably gets some rotation minutes, but I would guess that they start Dennis Schroeder, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Jakob Poeltl, meaning Gary Trent comes off the bench, and meaning Dick is the third string guy behind Trent. I don't think he's going to do much this season. I don't think he's got a robust fantasy profile either. I just wouldn't have picked him at pick 13. I think he can be a good shooter, but like when I talked yesterday about Jordan Hawkins, what else are you doing? What else is in your repertoire as a player? As a fantasy asset, can you best case scenario get to what he did here? 16 and 6 with 2 threes. That might be best case NBA career for Dick as a producer. Not to say that shooting's not valuable, because it obviously is. But he's not a 40% shooter yet. He needs to get there. Maybe he can be, but maybe he can't. I'm just not as in on these sort of one category specialist type players like Dick is, which what I think Dick is. Marcus Noel. 28, Marquise Noel. Why do I call him Marcus? Marquise Noel. 28 minutes, 12 points, 7 assists. The guy can score. The guy can play make. The guy's 5'7". I mean, he's not, but he also is. Like, he's tiny. And it's just not going to work out, unfortunately. He signed to a 2-way deal. He's 23. He shot 34% from the field, 33% from 3. The 7 assists are nice. He has some interesting little moves, but it's just not going to work long term, which is unfortunate for a guy with his level of skill and scoring ability. I just don't see how it's going to work out. So he flashed a few little things, and the assists are nice, but overall, I'm just not going to see it with that sort of size. And then they brought back Ron Harper Jr. on a 2-way deal again. He played 29 minutes. He's 23. He did nothing last season to get me excited. And I look at these summer league numbers. I go, 12, 4, and 2 with a steal and 35% shooting. I go, okay, that is like Monte Morris type boring numbers. There's just nothing exciting about Harper. I don't think that he's an NBA rotation player. I don't think that he is a guy that's even going to really last past this season. And nothing he did here as a second-year, 23-year-old player on a team lacking prospects, like they're running out the other Mamadou Gay and Desmond Cambridge Jr. and Daryl Morsell or DJ Hogg. Like, he needed to step up and do more. And he didn't. And overall, this was the most boring division in all of Summer League. Who was the best prospect? Dick? I guess so. Clowney? Walsh? Nothing. Nothing exciting about this division at all. But if you stayed through to the end, well, you're an absolute sicko, and I appreciate you. In fact, I'm going to give you one of these. Yes. Follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And if you are here on YouTube, you thumb it up, and you leave your comments down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. If I can find the button, I'll say see you again.